Hello there. You are someone and I'm someone else, and today, I know I'm looking like a billy goat. I thought I was gonna look like a shark with my freaking sharp teeth, but I look like more like a billy goat with this haircut. Anyway, that's besides the point. You are someone and I am someone else, and today, I'm gonna be talking about why should I pay for that? Okay? Let's say I disagree with abortion. Why should I pay for it? You know what I mean? So, I am pretty much against abortion. I think it should be legal to a certain extent to 9 weeks. I can get into that argument. I actually made a video on it, but if you want to go rewatch that video, you can. Why? My thoughts on abortion, you can go watch that video. But basically, why should I pay for your abortion? If and oh, you have to pay for the welfare of the child. Then I'm just enslaved to your decisions. Then why should I pay for either of them? Why should I pay for your abortion or your or the welfare? You know what I mean? Now, if I was a man and I had relations with the woman, I can kind of understand the argument, but I can't understand the argument if I didn't have relations with that. Why should the state ever get involved between me and the woman that I did not have relations with? Why should I pay for that? You know what I mean? 70% of my taxes, by the way, are going to people who make bad mistakes. Let's just be clear here. I'm going to be spending 9 to 10 years of my life for bad decisions that other people made. I'm not joking. We're talking about welfare bums. We're talking about drug users. We're talking about people on housing and people, like 70% of my taxes are going to that. Which, some of these people I feel bad for, but I can only feel so bad if we keep saying the same thing. Please try something different, and you just keep failing every single time, and you're not willing to change, then I won't feel bad at you after a while. Like, I can understand if you're just 18 and you moved out. I can understand getting a little bit of a startup with government money, but I never got any government money. Why should you be treated differently than I have? Now, that being said, I do live with my parents, so I do have that welfare system put in place. And most people are very lucky to be in the situation that I am in too, where we live with our parents. We're starting to become like Europe with the fact that multi-generations living in the same roof because it's just too expensive now to buy homes. Problem is our school systems did not incentivize a bunch of builders. We incentivized a bunch of college-educated fools. But why should my taxes pay for that? That's the question every American should be asking. Whether it be abortion, war, even roads or schools. If the schools aren't going to improve, why should I pay for them? If I don't have kids, why should I pay for schools? I don't know. This is really good arguments for why I shouldn't be. I have more arguments for why I shouldn't be paying for schools than should be paying for schools. Oh, you were educated in a society with the mandatory education that we forced upon you. Now you have to pay for other people's mandatory education, because it would be kind of bad if we had a future generations of stupid kids. I'm like, these kids are already stupid. You haven't taught them anything. They're not building homes. The real estate market's going to go even more because these teachers do not teach anything of value. I mean, they do in terms of reading and writing, but that's about it. Reading and writing and math. And math's actually vastly more important than the history or the English or whatever crap they teach you in school. Math's the most important. It's how you study economics, I'm reading right now Bushcat, which is not an economics book, but it really does show you what happens when teachers fail. This book is a perfect example. This guy had to flee his country because teachers failed generations of people. This army guy fled his country because a bunch of communists took it over. That's what happens when you get school teachers controlling a society. You get intellectual control in society. Say, oh, we need to educate the masses or educate the kids. And now, oh no, the kids aren't enough. We now need to influence government. When you get intellectual controlling the economy, not understanding that economics is spontaneous and not orderly, you get a situation where you got a bunch of people from Africa moving to different countries. And it was one of the wealthiest countries in Africa, and they moved because a bunch of communists took over. Now, do I hate the fact that not everyone could vote in the elections in Rhodesia? Yeah, sure. I hate the fact that Rhodesia was for the most part a 90% 90 to 80% white voting cast when there were only 8% of the population was white. Still, yeah, it sucks that the average person couldn't vote in the elections. But it wasn't like that the people were suffering much. I feel like they were suffering just the same amount, honestly. Regardless of which government they were under. And then the government that took over, there was electricity for nobody got electricity. So, I don't know. It would be better. I would rather have higher supply of electricity than no electricity at all. That's just my opinion, though. That's why I'm against communism. I believe that consumption is, for the most part, good. Once you develop your economy, the amount of pollution that you have is less and less. So if Rhodesia would have developed faster, or would have developed to everybody getting the supplies, eventually you get what you call it, the Q-Stubbs curve, or not the Q-Stubbs curve, whatever the curve's called, economically, where ecologically now you're able to replace the trees in your forest. You're able to build up the environment. That's what we're doing in the United States. Our environment's way better than it was in the 1950s. We have way more trees. We have way more nature than we did in the 1950s. We do have probably more plastic bags and crappy stuff like that, but at least it's not broken glass. But still, I feel like we're doing a very good job in the United States. Compared to China, China's rivers are freaking polluted. It's a socialist utopia. I mean, it's not really socialist. It's market socialism, I guess. It's more like fascism than socialism, in my opinion. But, China, they were able to open up capital, and it led to poverty. They put capital, a bunch of foreign investors went in, bought a bunch of stuff in China, and it led to some of their the poverty going down. And there was makeshift Chinese government, not government companies, but there were even private companies that not founded by government, now being influenced by government. So now the CEO is now directly a puppet of the Chinese government. Like Alibaba, for instance, was a private company until China took it over. And they said, oh no, you owe your success for the fact that you live in China, not the fact that you build up your own business and hired a bunch of people. Nope. No, it's just you owe it to the whole country that you're successful. So, yeah. That's another thing. Why should Alibaba pay for China's influence? Why should they have to give up control? They're like, that's such a stupid argument. Oh, you owe your society everything because you just live in it or whatever. That's so stupid. It's like, oh, you're a slave. You owe all your labor to the what is it, the master, just because you live in this beautiful plantation. Same argument. It doesn't. China has the same argument that the slavers had in the United States in the 1850s. You know what I mean? So it's crazy to me and we still use the same argument when it comes to paying property taxes and income taxes. I do believe that we should have taxes, but when you get up to 10% of income for any taxable income, whether it be real estate, personal tax, you've maximized the amount of revenue the government can spend, right? If you go up 10%, you decrease the amount of revenue. If you go down 10%, you decrease the amount of revenue. 10% is a sweet spot where you just have the right amount, where you have maximized the amount of revenue in the government, regardless of what you're taxing. 10%, whether it be stocks, real estate, personal income, because then the incentives work. At the same time, you maximize the revenue of the government. If you go 11%, you actually decrease the revenue of the government. And people don't seem to understand this. People are like, we used to have a 73% tax on billionaires and millionaires. I'm like, but the revenue's gone up. The revenue's gone up percentage-wise and everything. It's ridiculous to me, this stupid argument. Oh, well, it's not trickling down. They've used a stupid political hack phrases. I hate it. Socialists are stupid. They use these political hack phrases. I don't understand it. We trickle down economics and tax cuts for the rich and all these hack phrases that they use. Thomas Sowell talks about in his book, Tax Cuts for the Rich and Trickle Down Economics. It's not trickle down economics. It's side supply economics. Okay, first off. Secondly, it has nothing to do with the production of money or how money is distributed. It's everything to do with how resources are made. It has nothing to do with distribution. It has everything to do with resources. So, for instance, if you give tax breaks to Amazon, or you give tax breaks to somebody who's more productive, let's say you give one person $1 million, you give Jeff Bezos or whoever $1 million, right? The more productive person. That productive person is going to hire people, or he's going to invest in a stock that hires people, or he's going to buy an index fund, and that capital is going to allocate people to work. The other guy is either going to spend on lottery tickets, or he's going to go buy 1 million cheeseburgers with $1 million, or, well, cheeseburgers are now, $15, so he might buy 100,000 cheeseburgers. But that's not going to increase productivity as much. You know what I mean? Sure, there are pricing mechanisms basically saying, oh, we have a huge influence of cheeseburgers, but it's only coming from one guy. You just wasted all that resources for that one day if you spend it all in one day. So I highly doubt you can spend all your money in one day, 100,000 cheeseburgers, unless you go to multiple McDonald's, DoorDash it all to your one property. Like, that would be a kind of a waste. You know what I mean? Just because you give money to people does not mean that you're producing anything. And so that's what us economists, or at least Chicagoans, understand. Chicagoan economists like Thomas Sowell, and I think even Milton Friedman might understand this, is just because you give money to people does not mean you increase the production of labor, or even the production of what consumers want. And I also hate this other thing where they say, oh, CEOs need to pay their fair share or whatever, right? And the problem is we've already had CEOs that have had less pay and they've been less productive. If you pay CEOs more, they are more productive. It is just absolutely truthful. There was one company, I think it was McDonald's, I don't remember which company, but they had a CEO, they paid him less than $20 million or whatever in the employment package. And it actually led to the company going down. And then they paid another guy more money, and he did it much better. And most of the time, when you pay a CEO better, they're able to work harder or whatever. They want to work harder, and they do what they need to do in order to get those consumers to spend the money on the products they need. Yes, their main goal is to generate a profit, but they generate a profit by having healthy competition or healthy market forces. They don't generate a profit by bribing government and getting government subsidy. That's not capitalism. That's government intervention in the market. That could be considered socialism in some regard. I would not call it socialism because it's still for profit. I think most socialists, at least left-wing socialists, are against profit. I always hear like Marxists say they're against profit or whatever, so I don't know. That's what I assume anyway. I haven't read that much of Karl Marx. I've read a little bit of Karl Marx I've read the Soviet Constitution, where they reference Karl Marx a lot. That's what I read. Most of Karl Marx is from the Soviet Constitution, surprisingly. So I read, what I read is constitutional law. I don't normally read economics unless it's a Austrian or a Chicagoan or a Keynesian. I don't normally listen to economists in the Marxist school. The only Marxists I listen to are people who actually run governments, like the Soviets that existed, or the Chinese. I like to read their constitutions, just to understand how their societies are formed. And I find it so strange to me, because you look at a constitution and you look at what the government actually does, and sometimes they violate that, or they misconstrue the words. Like in the U.S. Constitution, we're not supposed to have any public spending for schools, right? Any federal spending for schools, but yet we do, because we have a centralized executive branch that has a Department of Education. Again, why should I pay for other people's education? Why should I pay for other people's abortion? Why should I pay for the kid's welfare? Now that the kid's born, I have to pay for the welfare. Oh, so you're either going to punish me for the fact that you had relations with a man, and you want me to pay for the abortion, or I have to pay for your kid if you don't get the abortion. So I get punished either way. I get punished because you decided to make a decision with another man. That to me makes no sense. But again, that's the society I live in. They believe in quote-unquote slavery. This person's old. We need a centralized welfare system federally to make sure all the old people don't die. I'm like, why is that my responsibility? Sure, they might have good World War II stories, but why can't they decide? Why can't they save up the money to buy their own healthcare? You know what I mean? I don't understand. Be responsible for what you're doing. There are people in this world that work 60 hours a week. Why should I pay for that? Why should I pay for other people who don't work 60 hours a week? You know what I mean? There are so many people in my job that work 60 hours a week. Meanwhile, they're paying taxes to people who don't work 60 hours a week. They have to pick up the slack just because they're not as productive. And that to me is just dumb. And and I hate when socialists say that CEOs and shareholders are the boss. They're not really the boss. It's more the consumer. Sometimes voters are the boss, and the voters are very dumb. Democracy doesn't work. I will make a whole video on why democracy doesn't work. I will generally make a video on why democracy. Another thing, death penalty. Why should I pay for that? If I'm against the death penalty, why should my taxes go towards it? War. War is supposed to be a centralized planned thing anyway, but why should I pay for it? I am pretty much against all forms of war. There's no reason we need to be going to war with all these freaking countries. These countries can go to war themselves. They don't need us. Iraq doesn't need us. We can pull out of Iraq, let Iraq become an Islamic state. I don't care that much about Iraq. I'm sure Iraqis love the fact that we're there. Maybe they don't. Maybe they hate us. I don't know, right? And I don't really care that much, to be honest. Okay, Iraqis, do you want us there or not? I would ask the average Iraqi. I don't think they want us there. I think that Iraq wants to be left alone. And I think that it would be much better if everyone left Iraq alone. The problem is Iran's not going to leave them alone, so that's why we're there. But it would be great if Iran could mind their business. It would be great if we could mind our business. If Iran and us could just mind our business, even China, everybody mind their own business, the world, and then just trade with each other and have high immigration with each other, the world would be a much better place. If we have high immigration, high trade, the reason why North Korea sucks is because they don't have any immigration and they barely have any trade to begin with. 80% of their trade or 85% of their trade comes from China. It's ridiculous. And then they don't have nearly any immigrants coming from China. In fact, it's more North Koreans going to China, and then not only that, North Koreans get sent back to North Korea, get executed. So that kind of sucks. But that's the problem. You get executed, you leave your country. That's stupid. Or your family gets executed while you leave your country. That's dumb, right? That's why, high immigration and high trades always led to more prosperity in the world. For every job that an immigrant takes that no one wants, you've freed up the labor to do more beautiful things. I'm a nurse or like something more interesting, or even a school teacher. A lot of our immigrants have have done labor no one wants to do. So a lot of what middle class women can become teachers. If it wasn't for the lower class labor, we wouldn't have teachers, to be honest. So that's wonderful. We freed up the market by having immigration, and we need to encourage it still. But it's just crazy to me, the fact that people are like, oh, you have to pay for this thing because it's socially, and my mom had that same argument to me. I'm like, why should I pay for, somebody with special needs? Like, why should I be forced to, wouldn't it be better if I voluntarily chose to put my money towards someone with special needs instead of forced to put my money to someone with special needs? Wouldn't it be better if we just allowed our money to go wherever we wanted? That's the argument I'm trying to say. No, she's like, my mom basically said to me, this is what she said, no, you don't have a choice because these people need help. So basically, I'm enslaved just because a person needs help. That's crazy. That is crazy talk. But that's the argument that a lot of these, even socialists, my mom's not a socialist, but a lot of people who are very welfare oriented or very humanistic or whatever, humanitarian, I should say, humanitarian people. Problem with humanitarian people is they could lead to autocracy. They could lead to a centralized government, which we have now with Joe Biden. He's not very good. He's centralizing a lot of things in the government that shouldn't be centralized. He's centralizing gun control. That shouldn't be centralized. That should be up to the counties and maybe even the states, not the federal government. It literally says in the federal constitution they can't do anything. The states can, but the federal government can't. It says it in the Second Amendment. Shall not be infringed. That's a state or county thing. That is not a federal government thing. I hate it. So, again, I don't understand this argument where I need to pay for other people's kids or other people's problems just because they have a problem. Like, shouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it be better if I voluntarily gave my money? Wouldn't it feel nicer, the fact that you know that you're loved more than I'm forced to love you or something? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the argument I'm basically saying. I'm like, wouldn't it be better when we live in a better world if we didn't force people to pay for this stuff? And people would actually see if these people actually have value, right? Why don't we prove it by getting rid of the welfare altogether, or getting rid of most of the welfare, 90% of the welfare, right? Let's get rid of some of it and see what happens. See if people actually take care of each other. And if they don't, that shows that humans are naturally selfish, like I've said, and naturally not good. I've always said that there is something about humans that make them, at least in our society, I don't know about other countries, but even in China, I know that there's the videos about China. There's a guy who lived in China for 10 years. He talks about the fact that people are taking pictures of the dead body on the side of the road. They're not helping him. They're laughing at him. And that's going to be our society in 10 years anyway. So let's prove the fact that I'm right. That human nature is inherently flawed. It's not good or bad necessarily. It's flawed. And the more we know that, and we're very high at communication. That's one thing that humans are very, very good at. Communication. I suck at communication, but most people are pretty good at it. Right? They find me a very strange creature because I can't communicate properly, but that's besides the point, right? It's just, I feel like because we communicate so well compared to other creatures, we believe that we're naturally good or talented. Like the Rousseau people say, the Rousseau followers of People's Rousseau. Humanity's born but everywhere but in chains. That's the Rousseau motto. I think that's the motto he said. And then John Locke says, it is people that are bad, institutions that are good, and institutions ground people. I'm in the middle, in between those two ideologies. I'm in between John Locke and Rousseau. I believe institutions can be inherently corrupt, and I believe that people can be inherently, they can be free but in chains, but also people can be just as corrupt as institutions. And I believe that, in fact, it's getting worse and worse. In Latin America, people are very corrupt. They say, who's going to take care of me? Government. Everybody in Latin America has that same problem. And then they come over here, they vote here, and they just say the same thing. Who's going to take care of me? Government. And then they vote in some of these people, not everybody. But I know Cubans don't do this as well. But other countries, especially Venezuelans and a lot of other Latin American immigrants, not Cubans, I'm not saying Cubans, but a lot of the other ones do. Because they're used to it. Cuba, they're so centralized that they're so afraid of any government handout at all. But some of the Latin American countries, like I know, Central and South Americans, they still believe in socialism. Unlike Cuba, that's been a socialist for many, many years at this point. And so it's crazy to me that they just want to centralize everything, and then they want government help in that. What problem is, when you have welfare, you enslave the person who's getting welfare, and you enslave the person who is giving the money out for welfare. You're enslaving two parties there. Welfare is inherently, it could be considered slavery. But at the same time that welfare is considered slavery, it's also considered very controlling. And you can also do gun control, and we're going to get arguments for gun control very soon. Anyway, you are someone and someone else. I'm going to talk about why should I pay for that. Goodbye.